Here's three things that people commonly believe about meditation that not only aren't true, but also they can actually block our practice. The first idea is that meditation somehow should be deeply relaxing. It's true. It could be deeply relaxing, but the actual experience for a lot of people is that it's not, especially if you sit for extended periods of time. And the reason for that is simple. This posture was really carefully designed and developed in the Indian yogic tradition more than 2,500 years ago. And what the idea of the yogis was to develop a posture in which you're neither asleep nor are you immediately pulled into daily consciousness. So it's a posture that allows both for profound relaxation and openness, but at the same time for uprightness and real vibrant awakeness. The anatomical posture almost like puts you in that place already by how it's designed. And especially in the full lotus position, our joints are as open as they possibly can be. Our hips, but also our chest is like in this posture. There's that feeling if you want to have a sense of openness throughout your chest. And that openness now starts creating a tension with where most of us actually are at with our bodies. So for most of us, where we start when we're beginning to meditate is that we've actually accumulated quite a bit of stress in our bodies. And stress of various forms, not just too much to do, but just stress like as an experience. The way that manifests in the body is by higher muscle tone, for example, and including our connective tissues. Just our body, when it accumulates stress, tends to also accumulate just tension that we're holding in our bodies. And that tension is like the opposite of that openness. So just by sitting in this posture, and even a chair version of it, as long as you're just holding the idea of uprightness and openness in your posture, also on a chair, you're creating attention with attention. Like you're sitting in something that's meant to be open and upright, but that position is now showing you all the ways in which you actually aren't there, in which just anatomically we're not there. And that tension brings out the tension that we're holding in our body. So for a lot of people at first, meditation is not, it doesn't feel relaxing. It can feel like, geez, I've never felt so much back pain than I do in meditation. But that's so the thing to notice is that that's intended, and that can become part of the practice if you know how to relax into the tension and how to guide your way through this whole thing as a process. So just want to point out the idea that meditation should be relaxing is actually not true. It's better to have a view and to expect, if I'm going to meditate, then meditation is probably going to flush out the tension I'm holding in my body. But that can become a path of relaxation. Now, the second misconception, and it's similar, but just on the mind level, is that meditation, you should have no thoughts, that your mind should be still and clear. It's a similar logic, actually. Usually what happens in meditation, the moment that we're stepping out of our daily activity, it's a little bit like you're pulling the handbrake on a car. And what happens if you're pulling the handbrake on a car that's in full speed? Well, you have a whole lot of thrust and impetus that's still moving. So oftentimes what meditation does with the mind, you're sitting still and suddenly it's a little bit like all that, everything you've been carrying in the trunk and in the back seat and so forth, all of your luggage, is now that you're pulling the brakes, you're putting your body in stillness, all of that stuff is being thrusted, is being thrown to the foreground. So very often it's not so much that we think more when we meditate, but we just tend to notice how much thinking is actually present in our mind and also in the deeper layers of our mind. It's just like now that there's stillness adopted, is that there's suddenly the space for everything that isn't still to kind of come to the foreground. So the idea, again, that meditation should be without thoughts, is oftentimes misleading for people because that's not their actual experience. But again, if you know how to approach thinking and meditation, then the very fact how much thinking there is can become a path to non-thinking. The third misconception about meditation is that somehow one should have unusual or exceptional experiences. And we tend to, with that idea in mind, that meditation is a kind of mystical or can be a mystical state. What we do with that idea in mind is we kind of start zooming in on and expecting. We may even already have unconscious or implicit ideas about what we should be experiencing in meditation. And it's not so much, of course, meditation very much is an activity where a lot of people actually do experience things very differently, or, something entirely new, sometimes not all revolutionary, but very subtle and just tender new feeling can arise. That's all true. But the idea to meditate in order to have some kind of special experience, that is the most effective way to block yourself from actually opening into a different way of being alive. My teacher, Baker Roshi, said that the greatest hindrance to enlightenment is the idea of enlightenment. So it's why that's a misconception, that we should be looking for some kind of special experience, is just because that very looking for is exactly how we're focusing the mind on some kind of expectation which we have, which is exactly the way that experience doesn't have the mental space, the bodily mental space to unfold in its unexpectedness and in its kind of extraordinary ordinariness or something like that. So it's better not to have that idea and to meditate instead with a feeling of just becoming deeply familiar with whatever your experience is. You just want to, in meditation, become deeply familiar with whatever it is you're experiencing. So if that is your fundamental practice, it's not about being particularly relaxed, it's just about noticing the way you may feel tensions and becoming deeply familiar, deeply intimate with those tensions. It's not about not thinking, but just about developing an intimacy with how thoughts arise in your mind, what that thinking does with you. And again, then relaxing into that thinking and becoming the space in which thinking can arise, but then also disappear. And third, not to look for special experiences, but again, instead just to be deeply intimate with whatever it is that you're experiencing. It's special already because it's this particular moment in your life.